The Little Train by Graham Greene, illustrated by Edward Arson, and read aloud by me, the new storyteller for SuperDogLover1. The little train had lived all his life at Little Snoring from the day he was born. In the engine shed behind the house of Mr. Joe Toddy, the porter, he'd never travelled further than the sleepy old market town of much snoring, where the great main line crossed the little branch line. Up and down the branch line, day after day, went the little train punctual to the minute. Everybody set their clocks by him. When old Mrs. Toddy, the porter's mother, saw the smoke beyond the bridge, she said, "It's 4 o'clock." Visitors in the warm summer weather would often leave the great main line and ride down the branch line to Little Snoring. How often the little train heard them say, "What beautiful, peaceful country, and what a lovely, sleepy village." But the little train was sometimes bored to tears. Sleepy, he thought. How little they know. Little Snoring is fast asleep. And he would stand puffing at a level crossing, lost in a daydream. If only, he told himself, I could see the world outside, where the great expresses go. One morning, he got up very early, while his driver was still fast asleep. Suddenly, he thought to himself, "It's now or never. I've enough coal in my boiler to take me to the end of the world," he thought. "Adventure, that's what I was born for. I'm just as good as an express." Then he thought of his little warm shed, and his driver, who was a kind man called Parsleythwaite. "Shall I?" he puffed. "Shall I? Shall I?" The porter, who had just got up early too, couldn't believe his own eyes. The foal, who had been up since daybreak in the meadow, laughed over his shoulder. "Poor little train. He's as slow as a tortoise." The hedgehog, who had just got up himself, said, "Good heavens, he's going as fast as a bird." The tortoise was halfway through breakfast and had his mouth full. But with every puff the little train cried, "Feed him, feed him, feed him." Meanwhile, the porter told the ticket collector, who told the driver, who told the station master, who telegraphed and telephoned to much Snoring, "Stop the little train, he's running away." Too late. The little train was free. "Goodbye, branch line. I'm going to where the great expresses are." You can see by the map on the next 2 pages of this book the way the little train travelled. At this moment, he's just passing the spot marked X. He only went at 25 miles an hour, which is very slow for a train, but by midday he thought he'd travelled hundreds and hundreds of miles. He was quite lost and thought that he might come to the end of England to see the sea. He had travelled through plains and hills and valleys and marshes and hills again. He thought, if only the folks at Little Snoring could see me now. Once he saw an express rushing past on the down line and called to him, "Ah, you big fella." But the express was going much too fast even to see the little train. The little train passed over a big bridge, and saw far below the steamboats going towards the sea. He passed a castle where hundreds of years ago the king was put to death. But the little train had never learned any history. He thought it was a new kind of signal box and had it on in case they tried to stop him. Miles and miles and miles, thought the little train. He was beginning to feel a bit thirsty, and sometimes he couldn't help longing for his nice water tank and thinking of explorers who died of thirst in the desert. As the sun began to go down, the little train found himself climbing and climbing into the dark, gloomy mountains, where there was no one there to watch him except the eagle soaring among the peaks. In that desolation, the little train began to long for the friendly whistle of the guard, the tapping of the platelayers, the hooting of the little foghorn. Here, the only whistles were those of the big hunting birds. The only hootings. What was it that made that wild noise just behind his funnel? Oh, how glad he was when the railway track tilted downhill, and once again he could see the long, level plain. But little did he know what perils were yet in store. He'd heard his driver sometimes talk of junctions, but the only junction he and Mr. Postlethwaite knew was the junction of much snoring, happy at having left the grim, dark mountains behind. He puffed through the darkening evening to the great city of Smoke Oval. At first it was just a smell on the evening breeze, the smell of soot and oil and glue. Then it was a din of hammers and grinding brakes and shouting. Last of all, it was a sight of blinding lights, huge black metal shapes, and more people than the little train had ever seen in his life before. Pushing, yelling, the little train, in deadly fear, shut his eyes. Stop! Bump! Whoosh! Mind your backs! Oh! Bump! Clang! Wee! Bang! The little train opened his eyes. Nobody had ever told the little train that the world could be like this. He thought that he had found his way to a terrible cave of demons. A huge voice that seemed to come out of the heavy air kept repeating the mysterious words. The train on number 3 platform is the midnight to Grimberger, High Yearning and Tonebridge Junction. At Little Snoring, there had never been more than one platform. and in the maze of rails and platforms and cruel shouting men, the little train quite lost his head. With a high squeal of fear from his funnel, the little train bolted backwards. Being on the rails, you see, he couldn't turn round. The signals were all at stop, but the little train didn't even see them. The point switched him wildly from one set of rails to another, until he was really dizzy. Oh, the little train thought, why did I ever leave little Snoring, kind Mr. Postlethwaite, and nice Joe Trolley? If only I could see them again, but I'm hundreds of miles away. I'm quite lost. I'll never see little Snoring again. The stars which came out one by one winked at the little train like the guards' lanterns. Then one by one went out. The little train was quite exhausted. He had only a very little coal left in his boiler. When that was gone, he would not be able to travel any further. He would just come to a stop until someone came and pushed him into a siding, where he would get older and older, and rustier and rustier. Nobody would remember him. Oh, I wonder, the little train thought sadly, what new little train they will have on the little Snoring line. I wish I could warn him never to run away like I have done. And the little train's steam condensed into tears on his windscreen. Rattle, rattle, rattle. That was the little train's couplings when it creaking. Puff, puff, puff. That was his little heart beating more and more faintly. There was only a shovelful of coal left in his boiler. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. What was that roar and rush bearing down on the little train? It was the Great Jock of Edinburgh, the famous Scottish express. He drew up just in time, or else you would have heard no more of the little train. "Countryman," he said crossly, because he was in a great hurry. "What are you doing on my line?" The little train wept and told his whole story. "Ah, you poor weak train," said the Great Jock of Edinburgh. "Did a fash yourself, which is Scottish for don't worry. But I'm lost, and I'll never see little Snoring again." "Dinna talk rubbish," said Jock. "You're only 10 miles away from little Snoring." You can see by the map that he was right. "But I've any coal left." "I'll push you home myself," said Jock. "We'll arrive there before breakfast time." And sure enough, before the clocks had time to strike 7, there was the bridge outside little Snoring. The little train, looking behind him, could hardly believe his eyes. 2 tiny black figures shouted and waved their hands. They were Mr. Postlethwaite and Joe Trolley. "Goodbye, my brave wee one," said the Great Jock of Edinburgh. "Oh, I feel so ashamed," said the little train. "Dinna fear," said Jock. "You're the bravest little train they've ever had in little Snoring. They'll be proud of you." They were. The mayor gave a reception, and the little train was asked to make a speech. But his heart was too full of joy for words, and all he could say was, "Puff,